Hey, what is up everybody? Platform Disciple here, and today we are looking at a more recent card than the past several cards I've looked at. I wanted to mix it up with something that people might actually remember, as opposed to basically a piece of ancient Magic history. Today we're looking at Jeskai Infiltrator, which was originally printed as a rare in Fate Reforged and was later reprinted in Commander 2018, and it is a 3-cost, 2 colorless and a blue creature human monk, and it is a 2/3. And the card reads, Jeskai Infiltrator can't be blocked as long as you control no other creatures. And when Jeskai Infiltrator deals combat damage to a player, exile it and the top card of your library in a face-down pile, shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. And then it reminds us to manifest a card, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and you can turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. And the reason I've picked this card is because it's particularly unusual even among manifest cards, and manifest cards in themselves are pretty weird and have a lot of unique rules to them, but Jeskai Infiltrator sort of explores those rules further because it does something very different than the other manifest cards, which is that it randomizes them, sort of. Or, well, it makes it so it's difficult to tell for your opponent which card is which. Specifically, they don't know which one is Jeskai Infiltrator, which is the intention of shuffling that 2-card pile. So, things you need to know about this card as far as rules go is Manifest is pretty weird. It's like Morph, but uses the top of your library, which makes it slightly different. To go over it briefly, Morph and Manifest cards are cards that will put a card face down as a 2/2 creature that has no cost, no colors, no creature types, no effects. It is just a 2/2 creature with nothing else really going for it. And those cards can be flipped face up, and flipping face up does not use the stack. And what that means is that your opponent can't respond to the actual flipping of the card. Now, if the card has a triggered ability that triggers when it is flipped, your opponent can respond to that triggered ability, but when they flip the card, that stat change, the type change, everything that changed, that flip, doesn't use the stack and can't be responded to. So it's just interesting. I would say probably 95% of the time that does not matter, but it is worth noting. It is also worth noting that Manifest does some things that Morph can't. Notably, Manifest can put non-permanent cards face down. So it can put an instant or sorcery face down. If that happens, obviously you cannot flip it, but there are some cards that specifically allow you to flip face down cards. If that happens when it is a non-permanent card, that card does not get flipped. I originally thought that if you flipped a instant or another non-permanent card, that card would go to the graveyard, but actually what happens is you reveal the card, and you reveal it's not a permanent, and then it turns face down again, and it does not trigger any effects that would trigger on flipping that card. So, little interesting bit of information there. The other thing you should know is that there are some double-faced cards that instead of having a magic card back on the back, they have a transformed side. Those cards came from Innistrad, and they're mostly cards like werewolves. There are some exceptions, and there are also a couple cards that came from other sets, but mostly Innistrad, mostly werewolves. Those cards, when they are manifested, they enter face down, but they enter face down as the 2/2 creature. They don't enter face down using the werewolf side of their card. So that's worth knowing. And it's also worth knowing that when they flip face up, they flip face up as the front side of their card. that backside of their card is not the backside as far as Manifest is concerned, and it's not the front side, it's just the transformed side. And there is one more piece of information regarding double-sided cards that you might want to know, which is that although Manifest allows you to put those cards face down, if any other effect would turn that card face down when it's already on the battlefield, for example, Ixodron turns creatures face down, it does not turn those double-sided cards face down, which I did not realize. So interesting piece of information there. You cannot turn those face down. Not actually relevant to Jeskai Infiltrator, but it's something you should know nevertheless. And Jeskai Infiltrator brings up a couple other rules regarding Manifest and Morph cards, which is that generally speaking, Manifest and Morph cards, with the exception of Jeskai Infiltrator, have to be clearly marked. First of all, they have to be marked as either Manifest or Morph, depending on which it is. If you're running both, it can be a little confusing, but they do have tokens that you can place on the back of the cards that indicate it. I don't have one with me right now, but in case you are running both, there is a tool for that. The other thing you should know is that you can't mix those cards up. So if I have 3 creatures that are manifested, I can't just scramble them whenever I want. Jeskai Infiltrator, as far as I know, is the only card that allows you to shuffle your face down cards to try to confuse your opponent. But there's one more thing that you should know for Jeskai Infiltrator that you would not usually think about as far as shuffling those cards, which is, let's say the Jeskai Infiltrator is my opponent's card, and I gain control of it. If I attack with Jeskai Infiltrator and manifest it onto my battlefield and the top card of my library, your opponent always has knowledge of which card is theirs. So it's indicated which card is the Jeskai Infiltrator to them because they own the Jeskai Infiltrator and not the other card. You don't have to divulge which card it is, but they need to know which card is theirs and which card isn't. That's just a rules thing. I imagine that was implemented to make it easy as far as card sleeves go, so you don't have to take the cards out every time this effect happens. And it just makes everything easier so that people's cards don't get shuffled into each other's libraries or anything like that. And I don't think there are any other weird rules that you need to know about this card that are particularly relevant. There's tons of rules about Manifest. We could spend all day talking about that, but we've covered the big ones. So how good is this card? Well, it's not great. It doesn't really see any play, didn't see any competitive play when it was in Standard, and it's probably never going to see any competitive play, and hopefully it won't because it's such a rules nightmare. Notably, the shuffling 2 cards face down is kind of a pain in a competitive setting because it's very hard to shuffle 2 cards in a way that is, fair, because you have to be very honest about not knowing which card is which, because it's very easy to keep track of one of the cards when there are only 2 cards total. So in a competitive setting, like a extremely high competitive setting, you would probably need to have a judge shuffle that 2-card pile every time. So it'd be a real pain if a card like this was ever competitive. But that being said, it does see a very small amount of commander play. Mostly, I think, because it is a fun card that people enjoy. The 2 commander decks that it really sees the most play in are Aminato, which is a planeswalker that allows you to flicker cards, which I did not mention, but if you flicker a face down card, it will leave the battlefield and then it will come back face up. It will not come back face down. So with Aminato, you can actually sort of mana ramp a little bit, which is kind of nice. And then the other is Ixidor Reality Sculptor, who is a commander who synergizes with face down cards. So as you can imagine, any card that turns cards face down or can turn face down itself or interacts with that anyway is likely to see play in Ixidron, or excuse me, not Ixidron, Ixidor. And he's mono blue, so Jeskai Infiltrator is a pretty easy include in that deck. But even in both of those decks, I think this is more of a fun card than a competitive include. So more fun than anything else, but it's an interesting card nonetheless, and it is one that I wanted to go over because I wanted to mix it up as far as doing a more current card. And then, of course, we have a altered card giveaway. Because it was the Easter holiday, I did not have time to alter a new card, which I guess you guys at this point have maybe gathered the trend that I have a lot of older cards that I've altered. This one's a little unusual because it's not a traditional alter. It is a foil peel alter, which means that I did not paint the card. Rather, I took a foil card, and the foiling on cards is actually like a kind of plastic. So it's possible to remove the paper on the back without destroying the plastic on the front. The easiest way to do that is to just soak a foil card in water, and then you can just kind of rub it off. And from there, you can cut that thin foil sheet and adhere it to another foil card for an interesting altered effect. As a matter of fact, this alter is not a magic card that I have pasted onto it. Some of you may recognize this is a Graceful Charity from Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't actually play Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to play a very, very long time ago, but I still have some of my old cards, and I thought this looked pretty cool. It is worth noting that like many card alters, they are not tournament legal, but foil peels are never tournament legal. You may find some judges that will allow you to use painted cards that are very well done. But this, because, obviously you can't really see it because, well, it's pretty thin, but technically that layer is thicker than the other parts of the card. I don't think you would ever be able to cheat using that, but they want to be extra sure in competitive environments. So you won't be able to use this in tournament play, but if you're a casual player, I do have a link in the description to the giveaway for this card, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, everybody, peace out.